Good morning, everyone. This is Robert Hubbell from today's edition newsletter. Welcome again to our weekly Saturday morning live stream where we talk a little bit about what happened during the week and just kind of huddle together to connect as a community and regroup for the coming week. Um, I will say that it was a good week on many levels, and that got lost a little bit in so much of the difficult news stories that the administration is struggling with. So let's not lose sight of the good things that happened. And that really comes from the resistance and from the fact that we are changing the narrative. We have captured the public sentiment. Every time we have what I call a measurement event, that is, every time we get a chance to actually have people cast ballots and raise their hands, Democrats and persuadable independents and disenfranchised Republicans come out in numbers to repudiate the Trump administration. And so we had on Tuesday the Afton Bain election in Tennessee, where she made up 13 points over Trump's 2024 victory in that district. And that is huge. If that is indicative of the midterms, what it means is that we have a chance of flipping dozens, two, 3 dozen, 4 dozen seats in the coming midterms. It doesn't mean it will be easy. It doesn't mean that we're entitled to win. It just means it's possible. 6 months ago, we were talking about flipping the House by 4 or 5 seats. Now I think we're talking about a governable margin in the House. And it also means that the Senate is within reach, which 6 months ago people weren't talking about. So this was a great week for Democrats because we had one measurement event, one real measurement event, and it went really well for us. But on top of that, we have the continued polling that shows that Trump's favorability ratings on every issue is plummeting. And yes, Trump is not on the ballot in 2026, but Republicans have lashed themselves to Trump, and they are taking his positions on every single issue that is going down the drain for them. And I, you know, through all of this, Democrats have remained united in the House. People are still showing up at street corners and overpasses. They're still writing postcards. They're still calling their representatives. They're still writing letters to the editor that are getting published. Please send those to me. So all of that is working. I have this sense that while the Republican Party is struggling, and let's talk about that in a minute, while it's struggling, Democrats are have this sense of esprit de corps that we are on the right side of history, that our cause is just, and people are not flagging. And so that's all very good. And I think all of that was lost in the awful stories this week coming out of the Trump administration. So let's just put a pin in that and come back to the end. I can now see in this new format the comments as they go by. Someone commented on HCR, Heather Cox Richardson's column this morning. I haven't had a chance to read it yet. If you want to expand on that, I might come back and be able to comment on it. So I'm going to speak for about 10 minutes, and then I will just respond to questions. And then at 1:30, I've got to go help my daughter and my son-in-law move furniture. So we are seeing the disillusion of the Republican caucus in the House. I mean, they are in panic. Mike Johnson was never really a real speaker. Trump was, but Johnson is toast. As someone in the caucus, the Republican caucus, said yesterday, if the vote was held today on the speakership, Mike Johnson would not win. He has alienated the women in his caucus. He's disgusted people in the caucus who want to do things. I mean, my God, they are going to introduce in the House, get this, on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, they are going to introduce their long-awaited 8-year overdue health plan to replace Obamacare. Now, 2 days ago, the reporting was they didn't even have the broad contours of what that plan was. On Tuesday, they're going to introduce it, and then they have 2 weeks to pass it before the Obamacare subsidies disappear. And when that happens, there will be another wave of anger and recrimination directed at Republicans. So that GOP panic in the House doesn't mean that we can relax, but what it means is that we should be confident about where we are in this struggle. There are internal recriminations going on in the administration over the killing of 2 survivors of an illegal strike on a Venezuelan boat off the coast of Venezuela. They're trying to throw General Bradley, or not General, Admiral Bradley under the boat. Rightfully so, I might add, but they're trying to deflect blame from Pete Hegseth and from Donald Trump, who are in fact in charge and who have ultimate responsibility for the killing of 2 survivors who were either seeking to surrender or asking for rescue. And the fact that they're pointing fingers at one another rather than touting that extrajudicial killing as they have done in the past shows you that they know that they have done something wrong and they have been caught. In fact, this week, I think one of my newsletters was entitled "The Tipping Point?" And I still wonder whether this is not the tipping point. This issue is not going away, and they are in panic mode over this. They continue to lose in court at the district court and the court of appeal level, which is really gratifying to see. But the Supreme Court just continues to operate as an arm of the Trump administration. I mean, they may as well close down the Supreme Court building and just take up, residence in the West Wing as part of the president's operation. I mean, the decision this week in the Texas gerrymandering case was an abomination, just an abomination. There was a 150-page plus analysis of the evidence by a 3-judge panel that found that the Texas districts were racially gerrymandered in violation of the Voting Rights Act. And in a 5-paragraph opinion, the reactionary majority on the Supreme Court said, no, we disagree. And, procedurally, you shouldn't, the court shouldn't have gotten involved at this point. But as many commentators have pointed out, if that's the rule that you hamstring courts and you say you can't get involved in racially motivated discrimination by redistricting, well, then that's a secret for success for any state that wants to violate the Constitution. All they have to do is simply wait long enough so that judicial review comes too late for the Supreme Court's liking, and then that illegal discriminatory plan stays into effect. I mean, it is just an abomination. And the fact that the court did it on the shadow docket with no briefing, no argument, and then the court acted as this kind of roving fact finder, which it has no ability to do, when in fact it should be applying the standard known as clear error before it overrules the 3-judge panel. But that's not what the Supreme Court did. They just substituted their own uninformed view of the facts. Just truly horrendous. And the first thing we have to do when we take back the Congress and the presidency is to expand the Supreme Court and make the reactionary majority completely irrelevant. Someone asked whether that means the decision in the Texas case means that the California case is not going to be, or the California Prop 50 is not going to be overturned by the Supreme Court. I think that's right. I mean, there's just no world in which the Supreme Court could make that finding as to Texas and then come up with a different finding as to California. So I think that means that California's new plan is safe. And then all of this is occurring before I get to the substance, which I have 4 or 5 minutes to do. All of this is occurring against a backdrop where Trump is clearly coming unglued. I mean, he's just oozing through the seams of whatever stitching is holding himself together. Um, you know, he is manic posting at 4 a.m. in the morning. The beginning of the week, he posted 160 Truth Social posts at 4 a.m. in the morning and then went to a cabinet meeting and slept through most of it. Many people have written to me and have said that that pattern of behavior fits certain diagnoses relating to mental deterioration. I'm not a doctor. All I know is if we had a friend or family member who was doing that, we would stage a mental health intervention for their own benefit. And no one is doing that for the president of the United States. And what we see is even his limited guardrails are coming down. So at that cabinet meeting, my God, he spewed the most vile, racist, horrible comments ever made by a president, period, full stop. But the fact that it was made in the White House at a cabinet meeting with all of his useful idiots nodding along is just shameful. And it's one thing for me to vent and to call it out, and I think we should. I think we must. I went to the trouble of saying in a newsletter, we cannot allow this to be normalized. But people understand that that behavior is not normal, that it is hateful, and this is the reason that his favorability ratings are sinking across the board. And it's not just him. He's got Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio and Linda McMahon and, Bobby, all of these people standing next to him, shaking their head in agreement, Pam Bondi. So the stench, the stain touches everyone in the administration. And while we shouldn't simply view that hate speech as a political advantage for us, we should also be realistic and recognize that when he acts that way, it has an impact on the electorate. And it is one that redounds to the benefit of Democrats. And I say that just so that while we're living through these kind of awful, horrible times, there is hope in that because it will allow us to change the hearts and minds of American voters. But at the same time, and I think this is a really, really important point, immigrant communities in America are feeling vulnerable. They are looking over their shoulders. They are worried who their friends are and who their friends are not. And they need support and reassurance from all of us that we have their backs to the absolute extent possible. So if you know someone from Afghanistan, if you know someone from Somalia or anywhere in Africa or any country that Trump would describe as a S-hole country, reach out to them. Be kind. Tell them that you understand their feeling. And here comes Jill with some questions. Thank you, sweetie. Be kind. They need reassurance because they are living in fear. Okay. I've got 2 or 3 minutes. I want to talk about two items, 3 items, and they all relate to the absolute lawlessness of the Trump administration. First of all, this just was disclosed this morning. Lindsey Halligan was determined not to be validly appointed as the U.S. Attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia. That should be the end of her exercising those powers. It turns out that she is still continuing to act as the acting attorney general in the Eastern District. of Virginia. Why? Well, according to reports, an internal legal memo in the administration said, well, the judge said that she was not validly appointed, but the judge didn't say she could no longer act as U.S. attorney and therefore she can still act as U.S. attorney. I mean, come on. Every lawyer who put his or her name to that legal opinion should be disbarred. That is just an absolute travesty of a legal opinion. And then you look at what happened with Admiral Bradley, saying that two men who were fighting for their lives, hanging on to wreckage several miles off the Venezuelan coast, represented a threat to the United States rather than people trying to surrender or to seek rescue. And so he ordered the firing of two Hellfire missiles against these two men, maybe drug dealers, fighting for survival in open waters. He unleashed two Hellfire missiles on them. And then he concocts this silly, fatuous, just, rationale that doesn't pass the good faith smell test, right? And he does that because he, first of all, is a dishonorable person. No one who saw that situation should have or would have done anything different than try to save them and to act according to the Geneva Convention and maritime law and the United States, U.S. Code of Military Conduct. But instead, he struggles to come up with this hypothetical, attenuated, speculative theory that says, oh, I get to kill them. I get to knock out these two survivors struggling for their lives with Hellfire missiles. What kind of sickness has overtaken the Trump administration that someone would stretch to come up with such a ridiculous rationale for killing helpless survivors? And so that thinking has infected everyone in the Trump administration, so far as I can tell. And it doesn't bode well for the upcoming release of the Epstein files. But what it does tell us is that we need to continue to raise our voices and speak out and condemn what is going on in words of one syllable, and not, I see these commentators on cable news who all want to say, and members of Congress, well, Admiral Bradley has had a distinguished career and he's an American hero, and I'm not, calling into question his bona fides. Really? He just engaged in a war crime based on the facts that we know to this point, and we want to give him some sort of special benefit of the doubt because he's a good guy that they've dealt with in the past. I'm sorry. We need to start condemning people who are engaging in a lawless manner so that they know that they will be held to account. Admiral Bradley has to understand he is going to lose his pension. He is going to be dishonorably discharged. He will lose his access to veterans benefits, even if Trump issues him a pardon. He should live the rest of his life in disgrace, as should Pete Hegseth, as should everyone in the chain of command, starting with Donald Trump. Okay, I've got 10 minutes left before I have to go move furniture. All right, so I'm looking at these. Okay. Okay, so Heather Cox Richardson wrote today about a new national security strategy. Oh, I see. Yes, there was this new statement of an international foreign policy, which I have not read that statement. I have read the Economist article about the statement, and Economist articles are not always to the point. And so what I took away from that was that it was essentially America first. It attempted to renege on all of our international obligations and treaties, and that's horrible. And I've had some readers write to me about that, readers from Europe who are rightfully angry and upset about that statement of America's new national security strategy. All I can say is let's hang on. I mean, we will get to a point where we outlast Trump, where we replace him, where Democrats are back in charge, and we will become reliable allies once again. And hopefully, we will never have another Republican president after this who will um, turn our backs on our allies. Um, okay, so there's a question about a hand recount in Tennessee for the 7th Congressional District. I find that very surprising. I don't know why that would be. The margin of victory by the Republican was 9 points, and Afton Bain called and conceded the race. So, and I also will say that that outcome was consistent with the polling, most of the polling before the election. So I don't think there's any indication of fraud there. And I think we need to be careful where there is no indication of fraud. We shouldn't be raising false allegations. And I'm looking at this comment. I don't know if there's anything more to suggest that there was anything untoward about the election in Tennessee. The result was kind of as expected, despite the hope that Afton Bain might win. Most of the polls showed, at the end, her losing by 4 points or so. She lost by 9 points. So it seemed like it was a fair election to the extent that has any meaning in an election environment where money determines almost everything. I do want to make one additional comment about the Afton Bain election. And that is, first of all, she did so well because more Democrats showed up in 2025 as compared to 2024. So turnout was depressed both among Republicans and Democrats, but it was less depressed among Democrats. That's good. It means that we are more enthusiastic and more committed and more motivated than our Republican counterparts. But I looked at the numbers from 2024, which was a presidential election year, and the 2025 special election. If all the Democrats who voted in 2024 in that district in Tennessee had voted in the special election in 2025, Afton Bain would have won by 20,000 votes. So, I mean, what that tells us is turnout is everything. We managed to get people to the polls in 2024, but we didn't manage to get enough of them to the polls in 2025. And that's why everything that members of the resistance are doing to raise the alarm, to send postcards, to educate voters, to provide ID to vote, all of that matters because turnout is the complete answer to everything. And that is within the margin of effort. And if we turned out every Democrat in Texas, we would win almost every seat, every congressional seat in Texas. Will SCOTUS reverse the Voting Rights Act, which refers to the Calais versus Louisiana case, which is currently considering whether there's anything left of the Voting Rights Act. And that's a hard one to address. John Roberts' life work has been to destroy the Voting Rights Act, and he is that close to doing so. But the procedural posture of Calais, and I won't get into the details, suggests that the court actually took it to smack down the Fifth Circuit. I think I have those facts correctly. So there may be some sliver of the Voting Rights Act that survives Calais. But frankly, I have lost all faith in the Supreme Court. It seems to me that you can predict with near 100% certainty the outcome of any case simply by asking the question, does the outcome of this case benefit Trump? If so, he wins. If not, they'll then apply the usual rules of precedent. Are there any limits on the number of times SCOTUS can provide opinions on the so-called shadow docket? Well, there certainly should be, but the answer is no. I don't have the exact numbers in my head, so please don't quote me on this, but let me talk orders of magnitude. Um, Before the reactionary majority took over, the number of shadow docket decisions was in the range of 1 to 2 per year over the previous several decades. Maybe it was 4 or 5 or 6. That's the right order of magnitude. But since Trump and the reactionary majority have taken control, I think we're in the range of 90 or so decisions in 8 years. So, or not 8 years, but 5 years. So So the frequency has gone up dramatically. And moreover, it's not just that they're issuing decisions on the shadow docket, it is that they are issuing dispositive decisions on the shadow docket. And Texas is a perfect example. Technically, technically, what the decision in Texas did was simply say, we're going to remove the we're going to temporarily stay the decision of the district court, and now go back and go through the regular procedures, and let's have an appeal on the regular timeline. But in the meantime, those district lines can remain in effect for 2026 at least. Well, that's complete relief. That's what Trump wanted. He wanted to change the lines for 2026. And by issuing a temporary or an administrative stay or whatever you want to call it on the shadow docket, they've effectively awarded Trump permanent relief. That has happened dozens of times under the guise of, well, we're going to slow things down and send it back to the district court. So it is just somebody put in there corrupt, Nancy Cochran. Yeah, it's corrupt. There is no other word for what is happening. And that is why we need to expand the Supreme Court to the size of the Ninth Circuit, 27 justices. And I can talk about that more at length. I'm certain I'll get some pushback about that. But here's my pitch. There were 4 million people in the U.S. in 1789, and we had 6 Supreme Court justices. Since that time, the population of the U.S. has, order of magnitude, increased 100-fold, 100 times. We've added 3 Supreme Court justices. The percentage of cases that they are hearing has gone down and down, and we have conflicts among the circuits. The Supreme Court is broken. And then when you add to that the corruption, there's every reason to say, let's just go ahead and add 19 Democratic appointees, start over in reverse Citizens United and Trump v. U.S. and Shelby County versus Holder, and Heller, and I'm forgetting some, but I pointed the list. The first thing we need to do when we take back over is to rehabilitate the court from the ground up. Because if we don't do that, everything that we do will be subject to review by this corrupt majority on the Supreme Court. And I know I keep coming back to enlarging the court. And the reason I do that is that can be done with a majority vote in both houses and the signature of the president. Everything else that people talk about, term limits, alternating appointments by presidents, all of those require a constitutional amendment, which is 2/3 in both houses, plus 38 states to ratify it. That will never happen. So we have one tool, which is to enlarge the court. Let's use it to the absolute maximum. So let me just close by saying this was a good week despite all of the noise that is going on around us, all of the awful lawlessness of the Trump administration. And so we just need to keep it up. Every time we get a chance to go to the polls, we make the point that there are a heck of a lot more of us than there are of them, and that we are going to win as long as we do not quit. God bless everyone who is still out there in the cold and the snow and the dark, protesting. I realize not all of you can do it, but everyone can do something. Everyone can amplify someone on social media, a message. They can share, they can post, they can send postcards. But most of all, I just want to say, do not lose heart. We are in the thick of the fight and we are winning. It doesn't mean that we can relent, but things are going our way. And we should take confidence and hopefulness and joy from that fact and just go back into the fight again tomorrow, the next week, and the next week. And as long as we do not quit, they're doing a heck of a lot to self-destruct. The American people are listening to what we have to say, and they're coming to join us. So with that, God bless you all. Have a good week. Stay strong, and be kind to one another, and especially to our immigrant friends who are feeling under attack and besieged. Thank you all. Take care.